What is up, horror fam? It's the most wonderful time of the year. I hope you guys are enjoying the month of October. I know things are getting really spooky around my house. We've put up a number of new Halloween decorations, as you guys saw in the intro to this video. It's also a time for us die-hard horror fans to come together and talk about some of our favorite horror films. Films that we pop into the Blu-ray player every year, films that we love watching throughout the entire month of Halloween. Yes, I said entire month because for us, Halloween isn't just one day, it's the entire month of October. Well, today, I'm going to be talking about a film that has earned a lot of accolades over the years. To my understanding, this film is universally loved. It has been hailed by critics as an absolute masterpiece, and before I get too far ahead of myself, I'm actually talking about 2004's Van Helsing, which just happens to be my all-time favorite guilty pleasure movie.
Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. My life, my job, my curse is to vanquish evil.
Now, let me hit the brakes for just a second before you turn your nose up at me and say things like, "Poppycock, what does that young rapscallion know about the divine art of cinema? How could he have such abhorrent taste in film?" Let me just say this. The term guilty pleasure alludes to the fact that I know when a film is bad. This is not necessarily a good movie, but there are a ton of reasons why I will defend the hell out of it. And today, I'm going to be talking about the numerous reasons why I think Van Helsing is a kick-ass action-adventure film. Now, just a little bit of backstory. So, when I was growing up as a wee lad in Nebraska, my father used to show me a lot of those classic black and white Universal monster movies. Films like The Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and I even remember watching Dracula's Daughter, which was a pretty decent film. But I became absolutely obsessed with those kind of films. I loved how atmospheric they were. I loved the depictions of, all these classic monsters that appeared in literature, like Dracula and the Frankenstein's monster. So one day we were shopping at Target, as all middle-class Americans do, and I noticed a poster for a film that I had honestly never heard of. It was for this film called Van Helsing, and I just remember being awestruck by the poster alone. The poster showed this badass-looking warrior standing on top of a cliff, and he's surrounded by all these classic monsters. You had the Wolfman off to one side. You had this hideous, giant, mutated bat creature, hovering above him in the sky, and I just thought it looked really cool. And my dad told me that it was actually a compilation of all these classic Universal monster movies. So you can imagine, as a giddy schoolboy, absolutely obsessed with these kind of movies, I was pumped to see this. My dad took me opening night. I remember just being in love at first sight, and I'm not gonna lie, I think this was when I kind of developed my first man crush in the form of Hugh Jackman, or as I like to call him, Huge Jacked Man. His rippling abs and perfectly toned arms aren't the reason why I love this movie at all. If you guys want to see my man card, I have it right here for you. But this film was torn apart by critics. In fact, I'd like to bring up two filmmakers that I greatly admire. I was at Barnes & Noble recently, and I stumbled upon an interview with John Landis, the director of An American Werewolf in London, and Joe Dante, the revered director of Gremlins. And so this was part of their conversation. They're talking about some of their favorite monster movies. Dante says, the Wolfman remake, the Mummy remake, and Van Helsing. These are pictures made by people who have no affection or understanding of this genre. Landis says, I forgot about Van Helsing. Dante says, of course you did, because it's forgettable. The only good thing about Van Helsing is that it made them go back and remaster some of the old movies. They made new transfers and saved some of the pictures from turning to dust. So basically what he's saying is the only good thing that came out of Van Helsing was Universal's decision to remaster all these black and white monster flicks, which, granted, made it, more easily accessible for the masses. They were able to watch these classic films in higher definition. But here's the thing. I have watched Van Helsing so many times over the years. I actually dressed up as Van Helsing one year for Halloween. I put together my own costume. I had the long black jacket. I had the black, I'm not going to say cowboy hat, but you know what I'm talking about, like his black hat. And this movie gets shit upon so much. And I swear, you look at some of the reactions on like Rotten Tomatoes and you would swear that this movie was responsible for murdering some of these critics' families. Like, this movie was just torn to pieces upon release. I think one of the only major film critics who actually enjoyed it was Roger Ebert, which, I love you, Ebert. He was a man who usually spoke from the heart. He was very honest about movies. And if Ebert can enjoy Van Helsing, then I think you can too.
We need you to go to the east, to the far side of Romania.
I see the Wolfman hasn't killed you yet.
Don't worry, he's getting to it.
Lorded over by Count Dracula.
Let's talk about some of the things that I really enjoy about this movie. First off, Stephen Sommers. His filmography in general. So, Stephen Sommers is someone who, it seems like he has genuine love and affection, for these types of stories. And his movies are incredibly cheesy. Like, you watch The Mummy and The Mummy Returns, and there are a lot of cheesy elements in those movies, and they're not always the best made. They feature some horrendous-looking CGI, particularly in The Mummy Returns. The Scorpion King in that movie looks like CGI vomit. But he's not very cynical. He's not a cynical filmmaker. He just wants to have fun, which I can totally respect. And Van Helsing wasn't a cynical, cash grab like 2017's The Mummy starring Tom Cruise. That movie was just desperate and pathetic. This movie, on the other hand, felt like kind of a loving homage to those classic Universal monster movies, which, right off the bat, if you're a diehard horror fan and you're into this kind of stuff, honestly, give this movie a chance. Even if you've seen it already, just give it another chance. Of course, I'm going to address what people dislike about this movie, but hear out some of my defenses. Okay, so it starts off with this black and white prologue. It's set in Transylvania. You have the classic angry mob. They're going after Frankenstein because he is trying to, bring people back from the dead. He's created Frankenstein's monster. And it turns out in this version that Dr. Frankenstein is in cahoots with none other than Count Dracula. Let me pause again because Richard motherfucking Roxburgh in this movie is so over the top and so cartoonish that you can't help but enjoy it. His performance is just so enjoyable to watch. It's honestly his version of Dracula. It's the kind of Dracula you would see in a Scooby-Doo cartoon or maybe a Looney Tunes cartoon. Like, he is just hamming it up like crazy, but you can tell that he's having a complete blast and he is just rocking that black ponytail. His hairstyle isn't as embarrassing as Gary Oldman's in the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula. Gary Oldman's hair in that movie looked like a baboon's ass, just hairy and round. But anyway, so the rest of this prologue, the angry townspeople basically chase the Frankenstein monster to this windmill. They burn the windmill down, and Dracula is very upset because I guess the Frankenstein monster held some sort... The Frankenstein monster was like the key to life, I guess, or creating life. So after the prologue, we flash forward a good number of years where we are introduced to Van Helsing. Now, Hugh Jackman has gotten some criticism for his portrayal of the monster hunter in this movie. Some people have said that he is very bland and he doesn't bring enough depth or gravitas to the role. But here's the thing. Hugh Jackman is instantly likable. He is just so charismatic. Whenever you see him on screen, you can't help but love this guy. And even though his performance in Van Helsing isn't the most lively, you still have fun with it because, he's this fearless, muscular monster hunter who goes up against classic figures like Mr. Hyde, which brings me to my next point. So Van Helsing, when we first meet him, he's on a mission in Paris, France to kill Mr. Hyde. Which, okay, another criticism this movie has received is that the CGI is god-awful. look, I will agree that some of the CGI in this movie is incredibly dated. Some of it does look straight out of a PS2 cutscene. It isn't always, isn't always used very well in this movie. Mr. Hyde in particular just looks terrible. But here's my defense. The monsters in this movie, particularly the werewolves, they have honestly really striking designs. Like, I love the look of the werewolves. They're huge and looming. They're bulky and muscular, and the Frankenstein monster pretty much looks exactly the way I imagined it in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So even if these are CGI creatures, I still like the designs of them. But anyway, so after this opening sequence, Van Helsing goes back to the Vatican in Rome, and it turns out that the Vatican is actually the secret organization that hunts monsters. Now, if I found out that the Vatican was secretly hunting down all these terrifying monsters, I would probably go to Mass more often. And then we get one of my favorite scenes in the film. It's the classic James Bond scenario where Hugh Jackman's Van Helsing is told about his next mission. He's to go to Transylvania to meet up with Kate Beckinsale and her brother to take down Count Dracula. And then we get that classic sequence where he's introduced to the weapons master of this organization. It's like Q and James Bond. In this case, it's this bumbling comedic relief character named Carl, who is this slightly vulgar monk. He kind of curses a lot, but his argument is that he's actually not a monk. He's just a friar, so he can curse all he wants. Damn it. But I thought this scene was actually kind of clever because it kind of subverts your expectations a little bit. Like, he's given all these really standard, bland weapons, like, oh, here's a cross, here's some holy water, here's some garlic. And then he turns and sees this huge machine gun where, like, when you crank it, it shoots out, like, these bullets. And he's like, why can't I get one of those? But then the scene kind of shoots itself in the foot because he does get a cool weapon. He gets this crossbow thing, this automatic crossbow that fires arrows at a rapid speed. So that was a very fun sequence. And then they go off to Transylvania and they're on the hunt for Count Dracula. When they get to Transylvania, they're not very welcomed. In fact, the man who welcomes them into the community, he has this very over-the-top European accent. He kind of sounds like Adam Sandler's Dracula in Hotel Transylvania. Welcome to Transylvania!
Welcome to Hotel Transylvania!
Over-the-top European accents, man. They usually make me chuckle. So the rest of the movie is just set piece after set piece where Van Helsing teams up with Kate Beckinsale's character, which, by the way, Kate Beckinsale is a vampire slayer. God, where have I seen that before? I haven't seen that in any other action franchises. Oh, man. What was the name of that other action franchise that she was in where she played a vampire slayer? Resident Evil. I'm just kidding.
It is a place where nightmares come to life.
He's the first one to kill a vampire in over 100 years.
A man without a past.
Do you have any family, Mr. Van Helsing?
I hope to find out someday. It's what keeps me going.
There's also a number of enjoyable action set pieces in this movie. After the confrontation with Mr. Hyde, when Van Helsing arrives in Transylvania, he goes up against Dracula's 3 brides, which, by the way, the actresses who play the vampire brides in this movie, they are on the same level as Richard Roxburgh. They are just chewing up the scenery as if it were an all-you-can-eat buffet, and they are just immensely entertaining to watch. But anyway, the brides come swooping out of the sky. He's firing his automatic crossbow at them, and he ultimately defeats one of them by dipping the crossbow in some holy water, which of course causes the vampire bride to disintegrate in thin air. And there's another set piece where Van Helsing finally arrives at Dracula's castle, and he faces Dracula one-on-one. And we learn in this scene that Van Helsing is actually the angel Gabriel, who apparently was sent to Earth to rid it of monsters. Okay. This is obviously different from earlier film versions. In fact, in earlier film versions, his name was Abraham Van Helsing, not Gabriel Van Helsing. But in this version, he is not, a professor. He is an angel who was sent to Earth, which is a little bit ludicrous, but whatever. He learns that you can't use the same old tricks on Dracula. You can't kill him by shoving a wooden stake into his heart. You can't kill him with a cross. You can't kill him with holy water. And so the rest of the movie is him trying to find out how to kill Dracula. And of course, he crosses paths with the Frankenstein monster. And what is the villain's ultimate goal in this movie? It turns out that Dracula, he wants to bring his unborn children to life. Like, his children are these just demonic-looking, mutated bat creatures who, I guess, can only be brought to life by means of hooking the Frankenstein monster up to this machine. And when the Frankenstein monster gets struck by a bolt of lightning, the lightning will then bring these hideous children to life.
My brain hurts!
Okay, so here's the thing. Part of this movie's plot is a little convoluted, and there are some plot holes in this movie. I mean, I'm sure you can read all about the plot holes online, but here's the thing. This movie does possess a sense of fun, and you get the sense that Stephen Sommers is enjoying himself. And that makes all the difference. When a filmmaker is enjoying himself, you can enjoy yourself too. And the characters in this movie aren't the best defined. In fact, they can be kind of bland most of the time. And to be honest, when you get to the ending, you find out that Stephen Sommers wasn't even interested in completing Van Helsing's arc. He just kind of throws his character arc out the window. But here's the thing. No, this is not a movie that you take seriously. And I guess you could make the argument that, if you're going to take all these beloved classic monsters, you should put them in a movie that's quote-unquote more dignified. But Stephen Sommers knew exactly what kind of movie that he was making. He was making a mindless popcorn action and adventure flick where, you could have fun, watching all of these really kick-ass monsters go up against the Wolverine. And that to me is worth the price of admission alone. And if you want to talk about standout sequences, there is a brilliantly crafted sequence near the end of this movie where Dracula kidnaps Kate Beckinsale's character and he takes her to this ball, this luxurious ballroom that is filled with vampires. And it is just, it's such a great sequence because, and just think about it. It's a ballroom dance. It's a ball filled strictly with vampires. That is pretty astounding. I actually love this whole ballroom sequence. I think it's pretty great.
From the director of The Mummy and The Mummy Returns,
Oh my god.
Hugh Jackman, Kate Beckinsale,
How do I kill him?
No one knows how to kill Dracula.
If you're late, run like hell. Don't be late.
I guess when push comes to shove, what I'm really saying is, don't expect cinematic greatness with this film. It has been unfairly shat upon by numerous critics, and let's talk about the ending for a second, because the ending, the big revelation is that Dracula can only be killed by a werewolf. I think this is actually kind of clever, because think about it. They're both these powerful supernatural creatures, and just the idea that you can only kill Dracula with another supernatural creature, I actually think that's kind of clever. And if you question it, that's like questioning why a werewolf has to be killed only with silver bullets. Why do they have to be silver bullets? Why can't they be bronze bullets? So we get to the ending where Hugh Jackman is bitten by a werewolf, and he transforms, into this really just terrifying looking werewolf, and he just goes face to face with Dracula. They get into this, huge brawl, and of course he defeats Dracula by biting him in the neck. And we get to the end of the movie where Kate Beckinsale's character makes a sacrifice to cure Van Helsing of his werewolfism. And God, they set it up for a sequel, but of course we never got a sequel. I mean, Van Helsing rides off into the sunset, and you get the sense that there are more adventures, down the road. There are further things that they could do with this character, but as you all know, this movie was so loathed by critics and many audience members that they never actually made a sequel. Which, okay, when they announced the Dark Universe with Tom Cruise, I had my doubts because, okay, so basically you're trying to get people excited about the cinematic universe, where your plan is to bring together all of these classic movie monsters and have them eventually fight each other. They did that already in Van Helsing, and it wasn't very well received, so why are you trying to do it again? I mean, it's, from a critical standpoint, I mean, trying to make a movie with all of these monsters may not be the best idea, but to me, I still have a huge soft spot for this movie. It has numerous enjoyable things about it. I watch it pretty much every October. I haven't gotten around to watching it again this year, but I certainly will. There was effort put into this movie, guys. That's what I'm trying to say. Like I said, it doesn't deserve the hatred. It doesn't deserve to be called, one of the worst monster movies ever made. It certainly doesn't. The final complaint about this movie that I will bring up, I guess audiences were kind of turned off by the fact that when the characters talk to each other in this movie, they're kind of dumping exposition to one another. There isn't much time for character development, but like I said, actors like Hugh Jackman and Kate Beckinsale are instantly charismatic and likable. So when you get them in a movie where they go up against all of these terrifying monsters, there's definitely an enjoyment factor to be found. And I guess when it comes down to it, I guess I have a softness for stories about regular humans going up against monsters. Another movie that I actually kind of enjoyed that everyone else seemed to have hated was Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters with Jeremy Renner and Gemma Arterton. Don't tease me about this, okay? I enjoy movies like this, and I have no shame about it. Give it another chance, guys. I think it is well worth your time. And check out Stephen Sommers' other movies, particularly his 2 Mummy films. There's always something to enjoy in these movies, and the actors are usually game. They, usually deliver enjoyable performances, performances that, at the very least, are committed.
Van Helsing, a film by Stephen Sommers.
Anyway, guys, that is all I have to say about 2004's Van Helsing. Not Helsing the anime, which is another amazing property. But thank you so much for joining me in my discussion of Van Helsing, aka the greatest movie ever made. But yes, guys, what movies have you been watching throughout the month of October? I would love to hear from you guys. So please, if you wish, comment down below. And if you liked what you saw here, please subscribe to our channel, Round the Clock Frights. We're very excited for the rest of this month. We do have some other videos planned, and as always, have a very scary night, boils and ghouls. And if one of you wants to set up a meeting between me and Hugh Jackman where I can talk to him in a very dignified manner, please get into contact with me. Otherwise, guys, take care. Thank you again, and happy Halloween.